Today we're going to be in the book of Proverbs once again. We're in chapter 12, picking right up from where Eric left off last week in chapter 11. We still got a long way to go to 31. Who's like really looking forward to Proverbs 31? I know the ladies just had a retreat around that, or an event around that topic. Yeah, we got a lot to go. And it seems, when we just got started and you just read the book of Proverbs, you go, oh, everything kind of seems somewhat similar, somewhat the same, or somewhat repetitive. But as you go and you find nuggets of truth, you begin to realize, no, there's a story being told. And the story today kind of accumulates around a specific verse. And that's going to be in verse 12 here. In verse 15 of chapter 12. So let me just read that one verse for you. And if we can just go to the next slide, you'll see that with me. And that is, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. So today we want to talk about that. I want to talk with you about decision making, about how we make decisions in our lives, how we should seek out counsel, how we pick between right and wrong, how we choose between right and even better, right? Or between great and excellent. How do we make a decision when we ask, what is the Lord's will? I don't quite know what the next step is. How do I make a decision that honors the Lord? You see, our lives are filled with decisions that need to be made daily. Like there are the bigger things that need to be made maybe monthly or yearly. For example, those of you who are homeschooling kids, like which program do I use this year? Is it going to be at Becca? We just went through this in our home. Is it going to be Bob Jones? Do you stick with CC or do something else? Do I apply for a new job to make more money? Do I get a side job? What do I do about my debt? Do I try to work extra hard to get rid of it? Do I consolidate my debt at a lower APR? I know I just led a finance class. That's on my mind, so that's why it was shared. Do I stay in this ministry, or is God calling me to another ministry? Maybe it's time for me to leave this. Maybe God is calling me to something different. Where do I take my wife on a date to make her feel special? Like these are just decisions that we might make on a if not daily, maybe on a monthly. If not monthly, maybe on a yearly. I'm ready to overcome this addiction in my life. What's the first step? How do I do it? There's this person in my family that's struggling. What can I do to help them? I'm ready to get married. What's the next step, God? So decision making is on a large scale is there, but on a smaller everyday scale, it's there as well. How do I respond to this person who just offended me? How do I love on this person who has hurt me? Et cetera, et cetera. And then we make these decisions when we go, oh, I'm already running late. Should I still read the Bible this morning? Or do I just get back into my day? So decisions often, the decisions that we make on a daily, they don't always require advice. There's a lot that we already know. As a matter of fact, there are often two different types of decisions that are to be made in our lives. There are the bigger global decisions where sometimes we need to actually seek outside counsel. And rarely do we do that. And we'll talk about why that seems to be the case. But then there's the other decision making that we need to make that's more on the daily aspect of life. And that is, we already often know what we need to do. We just fail to follow through. Have you been there? I already know what I need to do. No one needs to tell me. No one needs to tell me that there's power in the Word of God if I read it from the very beginning. And if I wake up early and I spend time in fellowship with the Lord, I know there's power there. And I know that every one of you who've experienced the consistency of being in communion with the Lord, there is power in His Word. There is power in prayer. And yet, for some reason, we don't always make the decision to say, yes, I'm going to be there 100%, and I'm going to make this decision to be in the presence of the Lord today. We know that there is one after another decision that we could make, and again, very often we already know the answer. So I've just kind of separated two different things. And there's a third little aspect that I'll run in is this. A lot of our decision making will either have positive or negative consequences for us. But they'll either have glorifying or devaluating reactions towards the Lord. Meaning my decision making on a daily doesn't just impact me, it impacts what people think about my King, King Jesus. And so how do I live in a way, so I'm just kind of bringing this all up together. How do I live in a way that I honor the Lord, even if it means making the hard decisions so that I might even struggle, but that God looks good? How do I make God look good in my life? How do I, even if it means me taking a back seat, how do I bless the people who are around me? Because now we've just discussed the greatest commandment folded in two. How do I love the Lord God with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength? And how do I love my neighbor as myself? If you are in your decision making, seeking out the greatest commandment, you are on the right path. If you are trying to make a decision, you don't know quite yet what to do, but in the midst of it, you're saying, I know one thing, I want God to look good. Okay, this is good. And secondly, I want people around me to be blessed by me. Okay, your heart and your mind are in the right place. If the decision making instantly goes just to attention or to riches or to accumulation of stuff, most likely the heart is not in the right place. We want to be in a place where we're living for the eternal, not the temporal alone. And so I want to give two examples. Today we're going to go a little bit of a different path in Proverbs. Usually we just take one verse after another. Today I'm going to use a few verses, but we're going to jump out of the book of Proverbs, and we're going to look at a very specific example in 2 Chronicles 11, actually from 10 to 11. But before that, I want to use a real-life example from someone this week. As a matter of fact, if anybody follows sports, there was an uprising, so to say, of commentaries after Harrison Buckner. Anybody read or saw this video? Harrison Buckner, he is a Catholic. He was invited. He's the best kicker in the NFL. And I didn't know his name until this week. I didn't. I'm more of an NBA kind of guy. Football is cool. Sorry, Eric. But I'm an NBA guy. Anyways, but I love these acts. I love these acts. And so what happens is Harrison Buckner was invited to speak. He's a Super Bowl champion, one of the best players in the sport. He is popular. People love him. People want to see him. People want to know him. They want to shake his hand. They want to invite him to all these events. So the Benedictine College, which is like a Catholic college, invited him over to speak. And for 20 minutes, and I listened to the full transcript, it's in the news. It's just all over the place. It's being talked about. What he does is he gets up on stage, and immediately he begins talking about Christ. And then immediately he translates from this, and he begins to talk about the need for us to honor God in our work and etc. He talks against abortion. He talks against all of these things that are anti-God. He talks against President Biden. He's just unloading. And then he gets to one point, I think it's at the marker 13, where he looks out into the audience, and he says something that you don't really hear very often, and he starts addressing the woman. He says, ladies, there's going to be a lot of women here who are going to have very successful careers. But then I'm not quoting exactly, he says, I bet most of you are just looking forward to being married and having children. And he says, because that is something that God has prepared for you to do. And then he got crucified for that specifically. But the reason why I want to bring him up is this. This man, just coming off of a fresh Super Bowl, he has a lot to lose with this speech. He made a decision. He knew that there was going to be backlash. He knew he was going to be attacked from the get-go, and he was being attacked, and he still is. So a lot of these things that he had said, again, there's this running list. He spoke out against Pride Month and called it a sin. He called homosexuality a sin. He called abortion a sin. He was just nailing one thing after another. And now he's just being attacked. Now, I bet there's this moment just before he went up to speak, maybe not even right before, right when he accepted this opportunity to speak. I bet he was sitting there with his wife, And he used his wife as an example. He says, my wife had a career, but now she's truly happy being a mom. And I bet he was sitting with his wife, and he's like, should I do it? Should I really say what's on my heart? Or should I just be like everybody else? I'm sure he sought out counsel from others. He'd be like, should I do it? Should I potentially end my career? Or do I just kind of say what everybody else should say? Anyways, clearly he made a decision to be very bold. And clearly it's in some ways backfired, but in many ways it didn't. In fact, what his courage did actually has spurred the courage of other people. And it's shown in little ways. There are so many outlets who are just saying, wow, this is great. Now I have the boldness to go out and speak. I have the confidence to go out and speak. If he can do it, then I can do it. His jersey sales are actually the #1 in America this week. Especially, in fact, all the women's sizes of his jersey are all sold out. So the ladies are supporting him as well. Overall, there's this massive support. Because here's the thing that I've kind of learned through Proverbs and through life in general, that the loudest voice is not often the right voice. And oftentimes the sinners or those who despise God, they scream the loudest. And sometimes we as believers have taken the back seat and are quiet. And I want to encourage us to be loud, to be bold in our convictions, to be unafraid of the consequences that might come in proclaiming who we believe in and proclaiming what is right. And if you walk in confidence, not just kind of say it, under your breath, but if you stand in the confidence knowing who you believe in, where you are going, that you are an eternal being and you believe in an eternal God and you're going to be with him for all of eternity, and let that confidence just kind of solidify your positioning and standing, that you're standing on a solid rock, on a solid foundation, and that everybody around that might hear your message, it's temporal, it's temporary, it's going to pass. And when we have this kind of mindset, we go, I don't care what people think. This too will pass. This earth here is temporary. I want to honor my God who is eternal, and I will be with him for all of eternity. So this man made a decision. We'll still see this week how it goes about. There's a petition, obviously, for the Kansas City Chiefs to let him go. They're not going to do it. I don't think they will. Okay, so now we're going to jump into the next passage. Well, that was not a passage, but away from Proverbs. So Proverbs 12:15, as I already read, just kind of read it one more time. So we're all on the same page. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes. Just listen to those words again. The way of a fool, I don't want to be a fool. I know you don't either. Is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. Now, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the book of 2 Chronicles. I'm going to go to chapter 10. I'm going to read the excerpt, and then we're going to talk about it, and then we're going to jump back into Proverbs. But before that, I'm going to go ahead and read our passage. 2 Chronicles. I'm going to read from chapter 4. So for the context, this is after Solomon has died, and this is his son. Okay. Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke that he put on us, and we will serve you. Rehoboam, that's the son of King Solomon, answered, come back to me in 3 days. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam consulted with the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. How would you advise me to answer these people, he asked. And they replied, if you will be kind to these people and please them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants. But Rehoboam rejected the advice the elders gave him and consulted the young men that he had grown up with and were serving him. He asked them, what is your advice? How should we answer these people who say to me, lighten the yoke your father has put on us? The young men who had grown up with him replied, the people have said to you, your father put a heavy yoke on us, but make our yoke lighter. Now tell them, My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father laid on you a heavy yoke. I will make it heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions. 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to Rehoboam as the king had said, come back to me in 3 days. And the king answered them harshly, rejecting the advice of the elders. He followed the advice of the young men and said, my father made your yoke heavy. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions. So the king did not listen to the people, for this turn of events was from God to fulfill the word of the Lord that was spoken. So all of the Israelites, I went down to verse 17, all the Israelites went home. But as for the Israelites who were living in the towns of Judea, Rehoboam still ruled over them. So King Rehoboam sent out Abadiram, who was in charge of the forced labor, but the Israelites stoned him to death. King Rehoboam, however, managed to get into his chariot and escape to Jerusalem. So Israel had been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. Now, the result of all of this, I know it sounds like, wait, how do we piece this all together? There was a dilemma. There was a transition of power from one king to another. And all of these rulers of regions would come together and they'd say, hey, this is a heavy weight that we're carrying. If you would lighten the load for us, we will serve you more gladly. And the reaction was, give me 3 days. I need to get some advice. And so he goes and he gets advice, first of all, from his father's advisors, from his father's counselors. And it almost sounds as if he rejected it immediately. Like he wasn't even looking for their advice. Like he was just going through a formality just to kind of get it out of the way. At first, he sounds wise. He looks like he's doing the right thing. Like, okay, this is good. This young ruler, this new king, he's going about it the right way. This is a monumental decision to make, a huge one. And it sounds like he's going to the elders. Now, when we have to make a big decision, obviously, hopefully, we're going to someone who's older, someone who's been there, done that, someone who cares about us and would speak the truth to us, and that we can come to them and say, can you tell me, here's my situation. How would you act in my decision? And obviously, I'm taking into context that we're going to somebody that, according to Proverbs chapter 1:9, is someone that fears the Lord. So the best person that you can go to for advice is someone that fears the Lord and someone that's going to point you to him. And so you go to this person. So this could be a parent. This could be someone in the church. This could be your grandma, your grandpa. There's so many different people it could be. But he seems like he's doing the right thing. He's going to someone who's older, who has more experience. And they say, hey, you got to lighten the load. I think they're speaking from a level of experience, obviously, because they were advising the father. And they knew the result. They knew of the tensions of the relationship that was already taking place. They knew why this group, this whole large group had gathered to ask for a lighter load. They knew that there was anxiety there. They knew that there was pressure there. They knew that they did not like King Solomon's policies, that he was too harsh with them. And so they were looking forward. They're like, hey, you're going to be ruling for all of this time. You need to listen. These guys are on the verge. These regions are in a place of rebellion. They're ready. You need to lighten the load. They know what they're talking about because they've seen the ruling. They've seen the negotiations. They've seen the counsel of Solomon coming already. So they gave their word. They said what they believed would be the right thing, and it was rejected. The result of this was he then goes to his friends. Now notice, it doesn't say he goes and he gathers more wise men. He goes to the men, young men, that he grew up with. He went to his buddies. He went to his buddies that already knew him, knew what he wanted. So essentially what he did was he went to find someone that would tell him what he wanted to hear. Have you ever done that before? You wanted to make a decision, You knew you're not right. I've done this. And I wanted validation. Someone to approve the decision that I was going to make, even though I know it's not the best decision that I could make. So that's what exactly, he gathers his buddies and he says, guys, what do I do? This is what they're saying. And they go, well, you guys heard it. You're tougher than your dad. You're stronger than him. You can do this. You're gonna crush these people. You're gonna force them to submission. They will fear you. They will listen to you. They will be obedient to you. You will rule with might and power. They're trying to bring him up. But essentially, they're telling him what he wants to hear. And so he listens to them. And after he goes back to this people in 3 days, and he shares exactly, almost word for what these young rulers tell him to say. They go and they split off. This whole group of leaders, they get their own king, and now Israel is split into two groups. He made a monumental mistake from the very beginning. He did not listen to the advice that he should have, and instead listened to his buddies and listened essentially to his own heart, a foolish heart. So I go back to verse 12, chapter 12, verse 15 again. The way of a fool seems right in his eyes. He was acting like a fool in his own eyes. But a wise man listens to advice. Now, there are three things that we can essentially take from this story. The first thing is, now, let me talk about myself and let you consider yourself. We often, number one, underestimate our ignorance. Pride can get in our way in a massive way. It's amazing how much confidence that we can place on ourselves when we know little on a topic. Sometimes pride gets us to have a blurry vision on a decision that we don't know much about, or a context that we know very little about. So this is exactly what we saw in this young man. He does not know how to negotiate with these individuals. He does not know how to rule these regions. But he believed that he did. And he thought it was going to be with might, and he thought it was going to be with power and pressure. Instead of listening to older men with decades of years and years of experience, got actual governing experience, those who had actually listened and shared advice to his own very father, who was, King Solomon. The new king and his peers believed that they knew better. So very often, pride gets in our way, and it gets us to underestimate our ignorance. Pride gets us to think that we know everything. And we know that God loves humility. We know that God loves, and it actually gets the attention. Humility gets the attention of God. Rather than saying or believing, I know, and coming across as I know, I think we've all met that person that thinks they know everything. Like, man, is there anything you don't know? These kind of people typically talk a lot as well. But in reality, if we would grow in our humility, then we would have the ability to say, I don't quite know enough about this topic. I need counsel. I need advice. I need help. Going for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. When we're called to walk in wisdom, we're called to walk in something that's outside of us. I'm not wise. I don't have all knowledge. I don't have all understanding. I don't have it all figured out. So as I go through life and as you go through life, when we're going for wisdom, we're seeking for something that's outside of us very often. And that's why it's so beautiful to have generations in the church and in the families, that we can support one another. So we talked about this a few weeks ago already. We can already begin practicing this, both sides. So whether it's coming for advice, but also giving it. Some of you might be like, I'm just too young though. What if I'm just 18 years old? Well, you can go to your 8-year-old brother and you can give him some advice. You can sit with him and love on him and pray with him and say, I support you and I love you, little brother. I'm here for you if you need me. I made some decisions when I was 9 years old, 10 years old. You're coming there. Here's what I would do differently. If you ever need my help, I'm here to support you. So you don't necessarily have to wait to give advice. You don't have to wait, but let's start a tradition. Let's have it a norm in our church and in our families where the generations speak, where we are supporting one another and we're learning from one another, and we're helping and we're providing wisdom towards one another. Another reason why he appeared to not seek the advice or apply the advice of the older rulers was he did not want to appear weak. In this transition of power, in these things that were taking place, it was very important to show yourself as a powerful king, not as a weak king, not one who is led by the subjects, rather one that can rule the subjects. He did not want to show on the outside that some other kingdom can come and overtake him. He wanted a posture of power. He did not want to appear weak. But really, pride can tempt us to avoid appearing weak. Fear was obviously likely at play here as well, since weak kings were targets for coups, attacks from the outside. So we, like this king, tend to be influenced by how our peers and our cultures define strength and weakness. And our prideful reluctance can often be viewed as weak, as we can easily distort our decisions and plans. Proverbs 1:7 says, "Therefore a wise man seeks out and listens to advice that helps him to fear the Lord more than he fears appearing weak, and to love people more than he loves his reputation." So here's the reality. When we're making decisions, let us not be afraid of appearing weak, because that's what the storyline might be. I can't go get help because it sounds like I don't know. Clearly, we don't know everything. So let us be a people who aspire to grow in humility, who don't have the pride to say, you know what, I'm gonna choose humility over pride. I don't care how people look at me. I don't care how culture defines weakness and strength. I want to make a right decision, and I want to honor my God, and I want to bless the people who are around me. And the third thing we've kind of already talked about, we predetermine the counsel that we'll accept. Pride gets us to be stuck on a viewpoint and only on a one lane. So pride says, I know the decision that needs to be made for a formality. Maybe I'll go and I'll get counsel, but I'm going to get counsel. Thank you, brother. But I'll get counsel from those who align with my thinking. It is so important for us to surround ourselves with people who might think a little bit differently. I'm not talking about to be yoked with unbelievers. I'm talking about fellow brothers and sisters in Christ who might have a slightly different viewpoint on something, but we can challenge one another. That's okay. It's good for us to be able to challenge and be able to talk. As a matter of fact, is anybody here love debating? Who here likes to debate? Like, I can debate all day long. Who here just hates debating? Like, let's just live in peace. Like, as soon as there's a conflict in the marriage, you go, no, let's just hug. Let's just cuddle. Let's just go for like a walk. Anybody here like that? I want to avoid conflict at all costs. You know, early in our marriage, Natalie's the debater. I'm the peacemaker. So early in our marriage, she would just try. She was just trying to get me on a hot topic, just trying to get me fired up. And I'm like, I don't like this. I feel like we're arguing now. She's like, no, we're not arguing. Like, we're debating. I love debating. I'm like, And then she's like, let's pick a really sensitive topic and debate on it. I'm like, that was her definition of a date. I'm like, okay, fine, let's debate. And she beat me every time. And I got better and better with years. So now I've learned her ways. But anyways, the reason why I bring this up is it's so important for us to be able to debate with love and have tough conversations. Because I've had moments where I needed to call something out in her life. And I would be like, man, if I bring this up right now, we're going to have a long conversation. There's going to be some arguing. There's going to be some justifications. We're going to go back and forth. And then it's going to be a long day, and we'll be tired, and it's not going to be any fun. It doesn't sound fun. And I would withhold loving, maybe counsel into her life. And I remember one day she comes to me. She says, why don't you ever tell me anything that I do wrong? She's like, if you love me, you're going to tell me if I'm doing something wrong. And I go, oh my goodness. So she wants this. She wants to debate, and she wants to have hard conversations. Who did I marry? But she would always do it to me. She's like, Tim, you're screwing up here and here and here. And I'm like, oh, thank you. My confidence level is so low right now, but I feel so loved. And then in the youth, we obviously had these games that we'd play. They're called Hot Seat. I don't know if anybody else played those games. Hot Seat was like you'd have like 6 to 8 people in a circle, and then we would all take turns. We'd take one person at a time, and everybody in the circle would tell them one thing that they are doing well and one thing they're doing poorly. It's like, oh, I love that you are so generous, but man, you talk too much. Whatever it is, like something. And we'd go around in a circle, and everybody would get one really good, encouraging thing, one not so good thing. So maybe next time you gather with your friends, whether you're married or not, or with just your own family, hey, let's play some Hot Seat in the living room. Be a good time. But the idea is this, it's really simple. We want to hear feedback. We want counsel. If you hear somebody give you feedback, counsel, and immediately you want to strangle them, you want to cut them off, you want to stop them, you want to debate them, you want to justify them, this is a sign of pride. And this is something that we want to avoid in our lives. We don't want to be like this king. We don't want to be like him. We don't want to be ignorant. We don't want to be falsely presenting this facade to not appear weak. We don't want to go to just like-minded people with predetermined counsel that we'll accept. We want to be people who make good decisions to honor God and to bless the people who are around us. But in order for us to do this, we need to be vulnerable. We need to be teachable. We need to be willing to accept counsel into our lives. And so I encourage you and I challenge you, first of all, in your marriages, to challenge one another. It's a beautiful thing because it should begin in marriage. In parenting, it should take place. There's this aspect of discipline, but it's not just physical, where you say, go to your room, or you're going to get spanked, or whatever. There's the discipline aspect of, I'm going to challenge your thinking, and I'm going to move you in a direction that honors God. Because the Bible tells us that our children are like an arrow, and we direct them in a very specific direction. And so as we disciple them, and as we counsel them, and as we lead them, we gather them close, and we speak to them on their level, and we love on them, and we teach them, and we provide for them counsel. And if we're able to do that in this beautiful way, it's going to translate into living, into application of truths. And the biggest thing, as we've been talking, that we could share and teach our children is to fear the Lord, and to walk in the joy of the Lord, love for Him. But as you can see, there's so many different aspects we can begin to bring up. The idea of wisdom and the idea of counsel. Sorry, we're finishing up soon. The idea of counsel and wisdom in our lives. So I'm going to come back to Proverbs here for a second. So in Proverbs chapter 12, I'm going to read the first verse because we didn't catch that. And that really, it comes in together here very beautifully. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge. Isn't that beautiful? Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge. Now it gets a little bit intense here, the second portion. But whoever hates correction is stupid. I didn't say that. The Bible said that. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates correction is stupid. Now, if we take this verse literally and we apply it into our everyday life today, because we make decisions every single day, the first thing we got to ask ourselves is, do I have an aspect of discipline in my life? Oh, maybe your children do. Maybe the youth does. But what about the adults in this room? Do you have a level of discipline in your life Do you have accountability in your life? Do you have somebody teaching you? Do you have someone looking over your shoulder? Do you have someone saying, hey, you are on the wrong path? Do you have someone that you can openly talk to and say, in this walk of life, I need counsel, I need advice, I need discipline? Because here, this is talking to all generations. Every single one of us needs that discipline. And every single one of us needs that knowledge, that knowledge that's going to be coming in, that's going to help us. And this knowledge and this discipline is in the form of correction. Did you catch that? Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates correction is stupid. So the idea is, with discipline and knowledge comes correction. Correction. How can I, as a man that loves Jesus, bring more correction into my life so that God can use people around me? And ultimately, the only way that's possible is with humility. So how can I grow in my humility to invite discipline, to invite knowledge, and to invite correction? I'm going to go ahead and end there. Can we just stand? We're going to pray. I know today is a little shorter of a message, but I want us to be able to remember this king. I want us to be able to remember his father who was writing these words in Proverbs. So we went from father and son. But in reality, what we just did today is we wanted to discuss knowledge as a whole in the decision making that we make. So as you are going to sleep tonight, I want you to try something. Instead of just going to sleep and saying, I hope tomorrow is going to be a good day, I want to challenge you to make a plan for tomorrow, tonight. That God, tomorrow, before I wake up, or when I wake up, God, I want to walk with you. I want to begin my day with you. So I want to challenge you to take your Bible tonight, not tomorrow morning, and open it up to exactly which passage you're going to read tomorrow morning. Exactly which one. I want you to place it in a place that you know you can find it, and it's going to be comfortable. And if you're a coffee drinker like myself, or maybe it's tea, you're going to have the coffee and tea station already made. The cup is already out. There's no excuses. Sometimes we wake up in the morning and we go, man, I should have read this morning. But when everything is already prepared ahead of time, there's no excuses. You wake up, the Bible's already open. I know exactly what I'm going to read. The coffee cup is already on the table. Everything is ready. The table is prepared for me to commune with the Lord. See, what you've done is you've changed the trajectory of your day tomorrow. You've prepared your heart for the next day. And as you begin with the Lord, then you say, Lord, I've begun my day with you, now I want to lead my day with you. I want to grow in my humility. I want to walk with you. I'm open to outside counsel. God, let me work hard today. Let me be diligent today. Let me honor you in my marriage and in my parenting and in my friendships and all the things that I do. Walk with me. Let people see your presence with me. And let all who are around me say, this man walks, or this woman walks with the Lord. And let them see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Let's finish in prayer.